Ms. Nuriddin, you're now recognized for 5 minutes. Just double check your mic if you would.
First, I want to thank you, Chairman Stile, and the esteemed members of the Committee on House Administration for the invitation to speak today. It's through these efforts that we can strengthen our republic and ensure that every voice is heard. As I am Vernetta Keith Nuriddin, a native of Atlanta. As you heard from Chairman Stile, I served on the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections from March of 2017 until June of 2021. During the 2018 midterm elections and the 2020 presidential elections, as well as through the enactment of House Bill 316 and Senate Bill 202. Before I talk about Senate Bill 202, I want to step back a moment and talk about HB 316. In 2019, HB 316 established the Dominion voting equipment as the uniform state equipment for Georgia. Like in 2002, as Mr. Spakowski reference, when the state legislature approved the usage of the Debo voting machines for the midterm election, like that, HB 316 was criticized for its cost and the corruptibility of the equipment. I bring up the voting machines past and present because both were a direct response to the public. One following the 2000 presidential election and the other following the 2018 midterm elections. In 2000, there was a public outcry to reduce the time it took to tabulate elections after Al Gore's defeat following the Florida recount. Parenthetically, I believe that HB 316 too was a direct response to the need to update Georgia's antiquated voting system, but mainly to provide a paper audit of Georgia's elections results after the 2018 elections. The paper audit requirement was due largely in part to civic leaders and organizations advocating for paper ballots. I maintain the concerns of cost and corruptibility of the voting machines are valid and should be mitigated. Having said that, I'm not sure if any voting machine can be designed nor created that would not have major opposition. Following the devastation caused by COVID-19, the unforeseeable impact that it would have on the 2020 elections, the Georgia legislature enacted Senate Bill 202, which among other things made sweeping changes to the absentee ballot process, ranked choice voting for UOCAVA voters, and prevents third parties from sending voters duplicate requests for absentee ballot. There was an outcry for changes in the absentee ballot process resulting from the reported delays in voters receiving and returning their absentee ballot to county elections offices reported by eligible voters residing both in and outside of the U.S., and the growing concerns about ballot harvesting. While on the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections, we demanded that all rejected absentee ballots and rejected provisional ballots are to be reviewed by the board prior to certification. We saw firsthand rejected ballots that were obviously written in the same handwriting. Safeguarding the absentee ballot process is vital to maintaining confidence in our elections process. Before Senate Bill 202, voters were able to request the absentee ballot up to the Friday before Election Day, which added undue pressure on county registrars to get the absentee ballots out to the voters by close of business Friday. Sadly, despite the voter outreach efforts of the county, Secretary of State, civic advocates, and nonprofit organizations around the absentee ballot process, counties still received absentee ballots after the election day, and many were even postmarked the day after the election. Senate Bill 202 provided the time needed for counties to process, mail, and ensure timely receipt of the absentee ballot by county elections offices. For the 2020 general elections, third parties mailed duplicate, even triplicate, partially completed requests for absentee ballots to Georgians. I received them myself across the state, generating multiple requests for absentee ballots to county offices, confusing voters who electronically requested their ballot or who voted early, yet they still received these mailers from third party. We needed clarification. Although many may disagree with the reduction in the runoff period from 9 to 4 weeks, there has historically been an undeniable decrease in voter participation during runoff elections. I believe that reduction in time between the election day and the runoff will positively impact voter participation. As a proud Navy mom of a son currently serving on the USS Michael Murphy, ranked choice voting is essential for military families and UOCAVA voters wanting to participate in runoff elections. The proponents of Senate Bill 202 believe that all the changes made by Senate Bill 202 are needed. The opponents of the bill will argue that the law was intended to advance a Republican agenda purposefully intended to negatively impact voting on poor communities and among people of color. Opponents contend that people living in perpetual poverty may not have valid identification nor access to equipment needed to copy voter ID cards. Further, that by disallowing non-poll workers from distributing water to voters in line, this will negatively impact the voting experience for the aged and those living with physical disabilities. Senate Bill 202, like House Bill 316, was enacted by a party line vote. The challenges that I personally, and I imagine many other Americans have, is that laws passed by majority party line vote, whether Democrat or Republican, is perceived to only advance legislation that aligns with that party's priorities and policy agenda. Why is this bad for elections? Mainly because no matter who casts doubts in our electoral system, voter confidence in the electoral process decreases while voter apathy increases for everyone. When the American people are caught in the middle of political sparring between the parties, we all lose. In my experience in elections...
Ms. Nuriddin, we're going to ask you just to conclude, to summarize the remainder of your remarks.
It's just 2 more sentences. Thank you so much. I didn't realize I went over. In my experience in elections and as a faithful steward of this process in Georgia, I have learned that whether a voter votes by punch cards, DRE machines, ballot marking devices, or paper ballots, voter confidence is directly tied to whether a candidate wins. Voter confidence will grow only with complete transparency and the enactment of elections laws reached by consensus and not by party line. I have faith that this can and will happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nuriddin.